Shalom Aleichem and a good Shabbos Bamidbar. Mishnah Yomi is in chapter 7, Mishnah 7, Zion. We're very Zionist today. Ol Hamelach, about the salt. Now remember, we are talking about takanot, enactments of the court for the benefit of society, and sometimes we saw we had to spend public money to wrap up some loose ends for the general welfare. Ol Hamelach Vola Eitzim, they stipulated on salt and firewood, that Kohanim could use them. We're talking about salt and firewood that was really donated or purchased for temple use. And we're talking about Kohanim making use of it for their personal meat that was from korbanot. So, for example, korban chatat, portions of it were eaten by the Kohanim, so they were allowed to use the temple supply of salt and firewood to cook it up and salt it for their own eating, but they could not use it for their own personal food. The Mishnah gives another example, ala para. There was a takana made on para aduma, shlo yehe molin ba'afra, that there would not be any me'ila on its ashes. Now, the Bartenura points out that deraisa, on a biblical level, there is no me'ila on the ashes of the red heifer, and we actually use the ashes in the special para aduma water, the mei chatat, to achieve tahara if someone's been in contact with a dead body. So the default is there's no me'ila, but the rabbis were gozer. They made an enactment that there would be me'ila on a rabbinical level because they saw that some people were taking the ashes and using them for other purposes. And it's not so nice for the paraduma, which is the highest level of sanctity and rescues people from the contamination of exposure to a corpse, and they were using it for their cuts, to as a part of the healing process or for other things. So they were gozer that there should be me'ila, that there should be a crime of misuse of kodshim if somebody uses it. Then they saw that people who were suffek, who had a doubt about being tamei mate, were holding back and not obtaining a sprinkling from paraduma water to become cleansed, even though they were tamei out of doubt. So they really should become cleansed. They were holding back because of this enactment of rabbinical me'ila. So they went back and they put it back to the din Torah, the diraita level. There's no me'ila on the ashes. And the Mishnah goes on, ala kinin, on the bird pairs, hapasulot, that they were bringing these bird pairs on behalf typically of a zav or a zava or a yoledis, someone who had these sources of tuma, and they needed to bring a pair of birds before they could eat korbanot again. Now, if these birds were found to be puzzle, they were no good, so you need to bring replacements. Shihu baut mishel tzibur. So the enactment was that the replacement should come from public money. So what happened was somebody dropped their money in the pushka, in the shofar, for their bird offerings, and for their pair of birds, one chatat, one ola, and they assumed that they had been brought that day and they could eat korbanot the next day. But what if their particular pair of birds, one of them was puzzle, had a problem, had something that was disqualifying? So then they wouldn't be okay unless you brought a replacement. So they enacted they should bring the replacement from public money. Rabbi Yossi says, actually, Hamsopek etzekini, the contractor who supplied the birds to the temple, who misopek etzapsulot. And in that contract was that if one bird was puzzle, then he would supply a brand new pair to replace the puzzle bird, so he can make sure that all of the zavim, zavot, and yoldot are taken care of. Mazel tov, and on to chapter 8, Mishnah Aleph. Kol harukin nimsain b'Yerushalayim tzahurin. All of the spit that you find in Yerushalayim is pure, means it does not contaminate you. Now the issue here is spit from a zava yoledet, would be an avatuma, would make people in kelim tameh if they have contact with it. So if you found spit in Jerusalem, most of the time it's tahar. Most people there keep tahar. Hutz mishel shuka elyon, but not the upper marketplace. This is a place where tameh people went. Non-Jews went there to do business, and tameh people went there also, so they wouldn't spread tumor around. Divrei Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi disagrees. He says, Bishar Yemot Shana, and normally throughout the year, Shebe Emsa Tamein, spit you'd find in the middle of the road, that's Tameh. Because, throughout the year, most of the people, it's not talking about Kohanim, not talking about people who work in the temple or going to the temple, and obviously they would go to the mikvah and be careful to be tahar if they're going to the temple, but just people walking around, most of them would be tamei, so they'd walk in the middle of the road. So spit in the middle of the road was tameim, but spit on the side of the road was tahor. Why? Because people who are tahor would be careful not to be in the middle of the road where it's very crowded and there's a lot of jostling. It's like being on the subway in New York City. Some people are going to touch you. So people are tahor. They don't want to become contaminated, so they'll go to the side of the road. And if they happen to spit there, their spit is tahor. And Rabbi Yossi continues, he says, is b'shata regel, but during the festival, shebe'emsa taharin. It's vice versa. Most people during the festival are careful to become tahor because they're bringing their karban shlamim, their chagiga, their pesach, whatever they need to bring, and they need to be in a state of ritual purity to eat it. So people in the middle of the road are tahor, a majority are tahor, so the spit there is tahor. Shabbatzadim tmein. The people who are impure, the minority, they go to the sides during the festival, so spit there would be impure. Because during the festival, the impure are a minority because everyone's trying to be pure to partake in offerings of the festival, so they would keep to the sides. Yashar kochachem and Shabbat Shalom.